Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I know that we all want to start successful businesses, but we should really be aspiring for is not just successful businesses, but businesses that last. And that's why I'm so excited for all of us to learn from today's guest, because this is someone who not only understands business growth and how to make these things sustainable, but this is somebody who is such a strategic thinker that I'm excited to get inside of his head today. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Marc Roberts. Marc brings over 40 years of leadership experience across engineering, operations, manufacturing, supply chain, commercialization strategy, M&A, and executive management. Throughout his career, he's led global organizations and partnered with founders, executive teams, and investors, all with a singular focus: building businesses that create real and lasting value. He believes that value isn't built in spreadsheets, it's built through people, strong relationships, and decisive execution. That philosophy has guided his work optimizing complex operations, driving growth, and helping companies navigate both pre- and post-acquisition environments. Through his company, Roberts Value Partners, Marc works directly with owners, boards, and CEOs to deliver strategic clarity, executional excellence, and high-level advisory across strategy, M&A, and leadership, helping businesses evolve and scale with confidence. We are all in for a treat with this one today, so let's dive straight into my interview with Marc Roberts. All right, Marc, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Heck yes. I'm so excited to tap into your mind. But before we start geeking out about strategy and all that good stuff, you've got to take us beyond the bio. Who's Marc? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
You know, it's really interesting, Brian, because this was really never on my target list. As I was growing up in St. Louis, I really only wanted to be an engineer, and I really wanted to be the one who was going to solve the cold fusion issue, because that was something that was very interesting to me as a kid. So I went off to school to be an engineer to begin with, and thinking that I'm going to be the one who's going to learn enough about nuclear engineering and nuclear science that I'm going to solve this issue of cold fusion. Well, life takes you down many paths, and that particular path wasn't really in my trajectory, I would say. So fundamentally, who I am, I'm just a guy who grew up in St. Louis, who is very dedicated to his family. I met my wife in fourth grade, and we've been married for more than 40 years, and I have two great kids, which really is my motivation for the things I do in terms of engaging with community, and as well as from a business perspective, in terms of engagement with people in business, which is really rooted in my family experience, why I want to help people on this side of the curve of my career at this time frame. So real simply, I'm just a person who has really one objective, one model in life, which is to help and assist people in any way that I possibly can. May that be through business, may that be through personal growth, and may it be through, just sometimes being there for them when they just need a shoulder to lean on. That's who I am.
Yeah, I really appreciate that overview, Marc. I've got to call this out. As an avid Boston Celtics fan, people from St. Louis love calling out that they're from St. Louis. Jason Tatum is never shy about shouting out St. Louis. So there's something in the water in St. Louis.
It is. It's interesting you bring up Jason, because Jason Tatum and my son, Garrett, are friends. They went to the same high school, Chaminade College Prep. They played 3 years together there. They played on the AAU basketball team. So yeah, there is something in the water. It may not necessarily taste very good, but there is something in the water that brings out the St. Louis in us.
I love that. And really, I mean, one of the things that I so admire, I look at the two most famous people in my life, Marc, from St. Louis, are both Jason Tatum and, of course, Nelly, who I feel like is the ambassador of St. Louis to the world. And the two things that I really admire about the empires that they've built is that it goes far beyond just their, let's call it their trades, just far beyond just music and basketball. And in that case, your own entrepreneurial journey, I think it's incredible the fact that you took this amazingly successful career of service, of leadership, of strategy, and of course, you turned it into a business. What did that entrepreneurial leap look like for you?
Yeah, it felt like a natural progression. I mean, after spending 40 plus years in corporate America, and been publicly traded companies, privately held companies, PE-backed I thought to myself that amalgamation of all those years of experiences and living in 9 different places in the U.S. as well as living in Germany, it felt natural for me to take all of that and remember, my basic premise is really about helping people and translating that into Robert's Value Partners and saying, now how can I take and get that out to really say, family-owned businesses, first-generation type of businesses who are really looking to navigate their way through the market space and may be interested in monetizing the equity that they've built up for the last 20, 30 years. So I felt that this was just a natural step for me to take to go out and reach out and help them. That's really just as part of the DNA of who I am and who my family happen to be as well.
Marc, I've got to ask you then, when it comes to those businesses that you help, there's so many things that go into running and growing and scaling and potentially selling a successful business. And of course, we could talk about accounting and marketing and sales and operations and human capital, all of those things. What I really appreciate about your work is it seems that you approach it really from the most important part, which is strategy. Strategy is the lever, is that if we're making all these things up simultaneously, there's just too many variables to figure out in real time. Talk to us about what is strategy, because I feel like we throw that word around a lot and I don't think people actually define it and set it. And then secondly, talk to us about the importance of not just building a strategy and developing a strategy, but actually deploying that strategy successfully.
Absolutely, Brian. So your strategy is really that foundational roadmap that tells you the journey that you're about to take towards your North Star. So first step in terms of developing your strategy is really to understand what is your business North Star? What is it that you want to achieve in whatever specified time frame that you're working at that you truly want to achieve? And the North Star is important because, as we all know, when we look on planet Earth, the North Star is the one thing that stays constant geographically for us. So that means once you establish that North Star, that's what you're going to do, independent of the changing landscapes and things around. Then what you have to do is now build those steps along the way from your leadership team, from an operational performance, from a supply chain perspective, from a commercialization component of your team, to support those entities that you're going to need to drive yourself towards that North Star. Now, a lot of people sit and they write down and chart a lot of stuff, and they put together 5-year pro forma plans, and they write down a lot of steps along the way that they think they need to take, but they never really spend the time to vet it out with the team and also make sure that the team is a participant in the process such that it becomes their strategy and not your strategy. The second thing that people tend to miss out on is, hey, development of a strategy is great. You put together some PowerPoint slides or, put it in a book or whatever and put it on the shelf. It does absolutely no good if there isn't an execution component to that strategy. So it's important to make sure that strategy you're building out, 3-5-year strategy, is executionable, that it's are steps that your team can take and achieve and hold themselves accountable. If without that level of accountability, you're really not going to be able to achieve that strategy. So simply put, Brian, is first establish your North Star, then build the components of your business and in the various steps that you will need to achieve that North Star. Make sure that the team is bought in, or more importantly, make sure that they're a part of that process along the way, and then have your execution. But the execution portion of it, and this is important, make it small and digestible. Oftentimes, people will want to come in and come up to the plate, and they want to hit a home run every time. And that's not what this is about. This is about taking little pieces and taking little steps, and a base hit here, a base hit there, and stuff, and compounding that to ultimately achieving what you need to do in the North Star. So make it small enough and digestible so that the team can realize the success and not hit a frustration point because they're trying to hit this home run and do this massive task in a very short amount of time. Then drive accountability to yourself. Make sure that you're constantly checking your progress and making sure that the things that were committed by the team are being met by the team. And it's a collaborative accountability. This is not about being punitive in any way. This is a collaboration that you're working with them to be successful, understanding that you have the most important role in this team, which is not only to be a cheerleader, but to be the facilitator of their success so that they can achieve those steps and be held accountable in order to drive the business towards its North Star. Strategy is the fundamental foundation that every business needs if it's looking to be successful and not just hampered. I talked to a lot of teams over the years, and I learned this one thing when I went to Sloan Business School at MIT, and it's a simple curve. It's called y equal x cubed, and it's a curve that kind of looks like this, and it has a plateau point in it. Many businesses will start off with no profit, no sales, and they'll grow, and they'll hit that plateau point in this y equal x cubed curve, and then they have to decide, what do I want to be when I grow up? That's the strategic point. That's the point at that inflection in the y equal x cubed curve that you have to put together your strategy so you can push yourself up the slope of the other curve, which is more exponential in terms of how it happens. But this is where you need that strategy. Because if you dwell there too long on that plateau, the curve turns into y equal minus x squared. And only two things happen when it turns downward is that either you're going out of business very soon, or someone's going to come and gobble you up and figure out how to fix you and put you on that trajectory curve that you should be on. So I tell my team all the time, we have to make sure that when we hit that plateau point or we're at that plateau point, let's not dwell there too long. Let's build our strategy, because that's the foundation that we're going to spring from in order to drive ourselves up the performance curve so that we can get to our North Star.
Mark, I'll tell you what, as a math tutor in college, I love me some x squared graph curves here early in the morning when you and I are recording. But even more so than that, one thing that I think is really going to perk some ears up is I feel like we throw around that term North Star all the time in the business world, and even just colloquially, I feel like in society, we talk about the North Star, but we forget about how constant the North Star is. The North Star is always in that fixed position. And I think that's going to surprise a lot of people, because they're going to hear you and I talking about this on a business podcast, and they're going to think, Mark, Brian, my business changes every single week. You guys are asking me to be rigid in the face of a world that's advancing and AI is changing every single week. And Mark, my retort to that is, I think that this is a very important conversation for us to have, that strategy is different from tactics. Tactics certainly do change over the years. And I'm 17 years into my entrepreneurial journey. The tactics have changed dramatically over those 17 years. Tactics, tools, all of those things. But Mark, talk to us about, what is a strategy? For people hearing this, they probably are coming to the realization in today's episode saying, I'm not sure I've ever had a strategy then. My strategy is, I'm going to post on Facebook for 30 days and see what happens. That's obviously not a strategy. So Mark, walk us through, especially with that differentiation of strategy versus tactics.
Yeah, so strategy starts off with, looking at the components of your business and understanding the various components of your business. And, from a manufacturing company perspective, as our example that we'll use, you have your team, you have the leadership team that drives the overall guidance of your general team. You have the team that's there that's actually delivering upon the work, working collectively. So you first look at the team and say, hey, do I have the right team members with the right skills to be able to drive the things that we want to do and perform what we want to do in the future? It's really one of the most difficult things to go and do that assessment of the team, because that's really important. The strategy needs the right team. Once you have that in place, then you look at it and say, okay, my North Star says that I want to be here in this time frame and with these certain level of achievement points at this stage. Now, as I work backwards from a manufacturing example, I need to understand, do I have the capabilities to be able to achieve those things? So now I do a complete capability study to make sure that I have the ability from an equipment perspective, from a partner's perspective on the outside who may be partnering with me for things like coatings and things of that sort, that I have put that together such that I can deliver on really what I'm trying to achieve and have sufficient capacity along the way. Therefore, I'm doing a capacity demand analysis up front to understand where I'm at today and where I need to be in the future, which then would define my capital investment plan that I may need to develop, which is another component of the strategy, because in that CapEx plan will say I need to invest a certain amount of money into that equipment, or that CapEx plan may tell me, hey, I need to inorganically go out and acquire the capabilities that I may be lacking, because it's far more efficient and effective and quicker as well to do that. The next thing that you do is, and from a strategy, is to say, now, can I put the right supply chain around? Do I have access to the right supply chain? And also a mitigating supply chain. One thing I've learned over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, and with COVID and the disruption in supply chain that we've experienced coming out of COVID, and even in the most recent history, due to the current geopolitical situation and disruption in supply chain, is that you need to have your primary supply chain and you need to have a secondary supply chain as part of your strategy. So next, I'm really looking at my supply chain to make sure that I have those two components and that I have the access to be able to support what I need to do, not only this year, which in a strategy, your first year, your strategy is your budget year, and then your second, and your third, and fourth year, and so forth on are your growth years. Once I understand my supply chain, now I got to make sure I got the commercialization plan. I got to make sure that I'm in the right market space, and then I got to understand what's my wallet size in that market space, and if I can organically grow that wallet size, and what does it take? Is it service? Is it some pricing strategy that I have to employ, or is it or is it some technology component that I got to bring to offer some level of differentiation to my customers, such that I can expand my wallet size with them? Or I got to also look at, am I in the right markets? Maybe I need to grow the business into some other markets that traditionally the business hasn't been in. And what is it going to take to be a participant in those markets so that I can add those components, may it be from a quality perspective, may it be from a capability perspective, may it be from a technology perspective. But I want to make sure I got a very sound commercial plan. So therefore, I'm working my CRM really hard at this stage. I'm out there with the commercial team. Everybody's working their sales funnel, because their sales funnel as an aggregate is equal to what we're trying to achieve towards our North Star. And therefore, we're out there working in different markets, making sure we got enough prospects in our CRM funnel that we can harvest out to feed the team that it's going to need. And once I understand my commercialization of it, it's equally important to understand the financials behind it. So I need to make sure I got a very strong financial reporting system that can not only report post results, but I need a financial system that can give me really foresight up front, that can give me some predictive capabilities that the team can use to be able to make real-time adjustments, particularly when you're in a manufacturing arena and you have your your operations team out there, and they need feedback on whether or not their direct costs or indirect costs is aligned to where it needs to be based on what's flowing through. So you need to have a very robust financial group and system that's running in the background with your components. In general, you've got to look at all aspects of your business that you're going to build the components for within your strategy, which are just building blocks to get you towards your ultimate goals and objectives. But again, the most important portion of this is the team, making sure that you have the right team with the right capabilities and really the will to want to do this as well in order to drive all this, because you can have all that other stuff. You can make millions and millions of dollars investment into capital and buying companies and having technology and your commercialization plan and a great sales funnel in your CRM and all that stuff. You can have all those components, and if the team is not the right team, you're not going to have anyone to really drive this down pathway into success. So again, strategy is made up of all those components that gets translated into a year-by-year tactical plan of execution that moves you towards the direction of your North Star.
Mark, I feel like in real time, you are showcasing to our listeners all the many reasons why our pre-production team was so excited to reach out to you and to invite you onto the show, is because this stuff it's not the easiest stuff in the world. Something that I always like to bring here on the air is that business isn't rocket science, of course. It's not very difficult to figure out, but that also doesn't mean that it's easy to follow. It's easy for us to talk about it, not so easy to follow. And I love, you threw a little bit of shade earlier that I want to come back to, Mark, because you said that strategy strategy is not merely a PowerPoint. Strategy is not something that we just write on a whiteboard. And here you are, and this is something we so appreciate about your work, is that you're focusing on the people. And it's very clear to me that as much as you love geeking out about strategy and business tactics, you equally love leadership. And you know that that's the vehicle that drives all of this stuff forward. So I guess it's a loaded question, but if there's one person I trust to fully answer it, it's you. What does it look like to actually take strategy from words that we say and things that we write down to actually enabling, empowering, and unlocking the team to manifest that strategy and make it real?
There's a really easy answer to that. The team needs to be a part of the development of the strategy, so that it's your strategy and not your strategy. You can't throw something over the fence to the team. It can't be that I sit here, in my home office or my office, at a facility and spend 2 or 3 months, developing strategy, in isolation in this cocoon away from the team. And then when I'm ready, I walk out like there's going to be this big fanfare and throw it over the fence to the team and say, here you go. No, that's a recipe for failure. What you have to do is very simple, is make sure the team is a part of the journey. They're the ones that should be developing the strategy with you. Yeah, you're providing some guidance and some guardrails along the way, to help steer them, but they need to be involved in the development of the strategy, and that drives success. That breeds success because it's their plan and it's not your plan. You never really want it to ever be your plan. This has to be their plan. So, Brian, simply put, the team needs to be a participant in the development of the strategy in order to drive its success going forward.
Yeah, I love that. Marc, we've got to switch gears a little bit because I knew time would fly by with you today, but I also know that listeners will be very keen for me to dig into this side of your brain, and that is about mergers and acquisitions. You've seen all different sides of these types of deals, and for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, part of the dream is to one day either be acquired or, heck, be in a position to acquire other companies. With that, those glasses on and looking at the world through that lens, what are those key ingredients that you look at through the lens of M&As? What sets a business up to be a prime target for a merger or acquisition? And then what can we do as business owners to tangibly move ourselves in that direction of an exit?
So when you think about M&A and your business and that's going to be a part of your journey as you go forward, there are, I'll give it to you from a private equity perspective, which is really, I think, a good way of thinking about it. There are 5 things that you need to know that potential buyer is thinking of. One is they want to understand your market position. They want to have clarity in your market position. Do you really understand the market that you're operating in? Is that market expandable in some way in terms of how you participate in that market and things? But they need to understand in the market. This is the first thing that they're interested in. The second thing they want to know is, hey, give me some evidence in your growth trajectory. Show me how this business can grow, because no one wants to buy a business that's just going to stagnate at the end of the day. Particularly, think about it from a private equity perspective. They'll go in, they'll look at your trailing 12 months, your TTM, which is called your trailing 12 months of EBITDA, and they're going to say, okay, once we agree to adjusted EBITDA number, they're going to assign a multiple to that, what they think the value of the business is. And let's just choose a number, say a multiple of 8, and they're going to multiply times EBITDA, and that's what they're going to pay for your business. But what they're really thinking is, hey, in 3 to 5 years, when nowadays they seem to be at exit points of 7 years, they've been a little bit protracted, hey, can I get my money back? It's called MOIC. They want to know what they're going to get on the return, the multiple on the invested capital. It's going to be the return that they're going to get on the dollars they put in. And so they're going to be thinking that, and they're going to think the way I get there is I need to understand what the growth trajectory of this business is. So you need, again, we go back to strategy, you need a strategy that demonstrates to a prospective buyer how this business can grow, growth trajectory, clarity. The third thing that's going to be important is operational leverage. How are you going to take this business and leverage it so that you can achieve that growth trajectory that you have, just explained to that new buyer? And that's going to be important. And that operational, leverage is really comes down to how well you know your business, You go back to some of the things I mentioned in strategy in terms of being able to leverage all components of the business such that you can optimize really the performance and deliver on the numbers and grow it. So the third thing they're going to be interested in is operational leverage. The fourth thing, I keep coming back to this because it is important, they're going to want to know about the team. That management team, does it have the capability to deliver on the growth trajectory and leverage the operational performance, and they understand their market? So it always comes back to the team. So they're going to focus heavily. That new buyer is going to look at it, and you can't be a team of one. I've met a lot of family business, and the family member wears 6 hats. And they say, "Hey, Mark, I want to go sell a business." And I explained to them, well, it's hard for me to explain that you are head of sales, you're head of operations, you're head of HR, you're head of finance, you're head of that, and there's no team behind. So you're asking them to buy you and you alone. I said, that's a scary proposition for them. So making sure that you have a team that can deliver on the plan that you're presenting and that you're selling to them is really, really important. And then the last thing that everyone's going to be thinking is, and you're going to say, well, Mark, this is like putting the cart before the horse, but it isn't. They're going to be thinking exit strategy. What's their exit map? Hey, I'm going to buy your business. I'm going to pay you 6 or 8 multiple on your EBITDA on your business. But in 5 years or 7 years down the path, I need to know what that exit map looks for me. Multiple on invested capital. What is that going to look for me? So you're going to clearly be able to articulate those 5 things. And even though this is like typical private equity line of thinking, but it is applicable across the board to any buyer. They're going to be thinking these similar things along the way when they buy your business. So you need to be prepared. And it goes back to what we discussed earlier, is developing a strategy that really answers all of these questions and can demonstrate these things.
Yeah. And the more you talk about that, Mark, of course we need a strategy, because really when you talk about these things, where my head goes is this doesn't happen by mistake. These are intentional steps. So I really appreciate those insights and the fact that, Mark, listeners know that you've not been prepped with any of these questions today, and you are absolutely rocking it because you've made a lifetime out of doing this meaningful work. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm really excited to see how you answer this last question, because I very intentionally keep it super broad so that guests can take in any direction they want. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and knowing that you are one of us, you're a fellow entrepreneur, what's that one thing you want to leave them with today?
I think the thing that's really important is to understand really the soul of your business. What is it that your business brings to the marketplace that's a differentiator that you can offer to people out there, that they're going to want to engage you in your business? It doesn't matter what it is that you're selling or marketing, but you need to make sure you truly understand the soul of your business so that you can convey that to the people that you're looking to engage to buy your product or to engage in your services that you have. Understanding the soul of your business, coupled with having commitment. And making sure that you are in lockstep with what you say you want to do, but demonstrate that commitment at all times. And that really requires some sacrifices here and there, but demonstrate that commitment based on the fact that you really have the essence of your business that you're transferring to your people. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, there are a lot of great ideals out there. I was talking to someone just the other day over at the gym. I like exercising and 5-6 days a week. And I was talking to a young lady, and she's got this ideal, and she's like, Mark, everybody's going to like this because I like it. And I'm trying to convey to it, okay, I get that. It's like, your grandmother's cake, and you like your grandmother's cake, and you think everybody else is going to like it, so let's open up a bakery. I said, it doesn't necessarily work that way. So you need to, understand the soul component of it, but then be committed to, okay, what do I need to do to connect with that group out there? And that takes a level of commitment and time, and patience. And, there's There's always failure before success, and failure is the biggest opportunity of learning. So you can't look at it as a roadblock. You got to be able to go through that process in order to really punch through that wall that every entrepreneur will face at some point in their business. Maybe networking capital issues, maybe I just can't find the people, whatever. You got to hang in there and be patient. As long as you got a business with soul, and as long as you're committed to it, and as long as you understand the steps that you need to drive the engagement of your business with the clients or people that you're looking to do and things, then patience is going to be the one that's going to hold you together, because it sometimes takes time. It takes a good year or two, depending on the type of business you're in, for it to be sticky, and which is really what you're ultimately looking to do. That would be my advice. Outside of that, I would say, hey, learn not to sleep, because you won't sleep a lot, because that's something else. So maybe you want to exercise to keep your energy level up so you can do all of these things.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Mark, you make me want to do some soul searching here today, because I feel like all that soul searching leads to really good strategy and a lot of natural excitement. People always ask me how I have so much energy. The truth is I'm excited about what I'm doing, and that yields energy. So I love how much all of these things play in together with you. I'm also really excited for listeners to find all the amazing work that you're doing on. I will say to you very publicly here on the air together is that as soon as our pre-production team landed on your website, instantly we were just like, we got to reach out and have Marc on the show. So super grateful that you're here. Really excited for listeners to find you. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, so if you'd like to engage with us, please join us at robertsvaluepartners.com and reach out to me through there so that we can have a conversation. I like I said, I'm here to help. So again, that's robertsvaluepartners.com. And one more thing I want to leave you guys with. There's another reason why Roberts Value Partner exists. It's because we have a foundation called the Roberts Foundation. Roberts Value Partners is the financial conduit that feeds the Roberts Foundation, which we engage in scholarships to kids. We're out there bringing financial acumen to people. We are engaged in the community. So it's another great motivator for us to drive our business. And to reach us at our foundation, just the Roberts at fdn.org is our Roberts Foundation, which is really a driving force behind why Roberts Value Partners exist.
Yes, and listeners, you already know we're making it as easy as possible for you to find all of those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Otherwise, Marc, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me.